Hey, welcome back. I'm Julia, and before we dive in, I need to ask you something personal. Have you ever sat across from a woman at dinner somewhere far from home and realized she was genuinely interested in you? Not because you drove a nice car or had the right Instagram aesthetic, but just because of who you are and where you come from? If that's never happened to you in the States, I want you to stay with me today, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why that experience exists, where to find it, and how to make the most of it, affordably, safely, and authentically. We're talking about real countries, real cultures, real women, and a very real shift in how older American men are perceived on the world stage. So let's get into it. Colombia. Let me start with a country that I think gets misunderstood more than almost any other on earth, and that misunderstanding is actually costing single American men an extraordinary opportunity. Colombia. When most Americans hear that word, they still picture the headlines from the 90s, the chaos, the cartels, the danger, and I get it. That narrative stuck hard. But here's what I need you to understand. The Colombia of 2024 is a completely different country. Cities like Medellin, Cartagena, and Bogota have undergone transformations so dramatic that even Colombians who left decades ago come back and can barely recognize them. Medellin, which was once considered one of the most dangerous cities in the world, has won multiple international urban innovation awards. It has a world-class metro system, a vibrant cafe culture, stunning mountain neighborhoods, and a social energy that is unlike anything you'll find in North America. So why do Colombian women respond so warmly to older American men specifically? Let me give you the real answer, because it's more nuanced than most people think. Colombian culture is deeply family-oriented and places enormous value on stability, reliability, and emotional maturity. A man who has lived life, who carries himself with calm confidence rather than the restless energy of someone still trying to figure out who he is, that man is extraordinarily attractive in Colombian culture. Age is not something women there apologize for finding appealing. It's openly valued. There's even a cultural concept. The idea of a man who has arrived, who knows himself, who doesn't need to perform or prove anything. Older American men, particularly those who are self-assured, curious, and warm, fit that archetype beautifully. Now layer on top of that the economic reality. The Colombian peso means your dollars stretch significantly. A beautiful apartment in Medellin's El Poblado neighborhood, the kind with a terrace, a city view, and security, will cost you a fraction of what a studio in Phoenix would run you. A full dinner for two at a genuinely excellent restaurant with drinks might cost you the equivalent of $15 to $20. A taxi ride across the city? Maybe $2. Your social security check or your modest pension becomes a life of genuine comfort there, not a life of barely scraping by. But here's what I really want you to take away about Colombia, and I'll say this about every country we cover today. The women you're going to meet are not looking for a visa or a wallet. That's a stereotype that colonizes a lot of American men's thinking before they even get on the plane, and it causes them to either avoid going altogether or to arrive with a defensive posture that ruins any chance of a genuine connection. Yes, economic differences exist. Yes, Colombia is a developing country, but Colombian women, particularly educated, professional women in their 30s and 40s, are choosing to date older American men because they find them culturally interesting, emotionally available, and yes, attractive. They are not victims of circumstance. They are women making informed choices about the kind of partner they want. Let me talk about where to actually go and what to actually do. Medellin is your starting point if you've never been to Colombia. The climate is perfect year-round. They call it the city of eternal spring for a reason. It genuinely sits at an elevation that keeps it warm, but never oppressively hot. The El Poblado and Laureles neighborhoods are safe, walkable, and full of cafes, parks, restaurants, and language exchange events. Spanish is the key that unlocks everything there, and even basic phrases go an enormous distance. You don't need to be fluent. You need to be willing to try, to laugh at yourself when you get it wrong, and to show genuine curiosity about her world. Cartagena is a different experience entirely. Coastal, colonial, humid, electric. The old walled city is one of the most beautiful urban environments in the Americas, with brightly painted buildings, bougainvillea spilling over balconies, and a warmth from the people that feels almost supernatural. Women in Cartagena tend to be outgoing and expressive in a way that can feel overwhelming if you're used to the emotional reserve of American dating culture. They will look you in the eye. They will ask you real questions. They will laugh loudly and not apologize for it. For a man who has spent years on dating apps exchanging one-word texts with women who respond 3 days later with a thumbs-up emoji, Cartagena is like being doused in cold water in the best possible way. Bogota is for the man who wants a city in the full sense of the word: museums, theater, incredible food, intellectual energy. It's a bit cooler at high altitude and feels more cosmopolitan. Women in Bogota tend to be highly educated and professionally accomplished. They're looking for a real conversation partner, someone who has something to say about the world. If you bring that, you will find genuine, deep connections there. Safety note: I want to be honest with you. Colombia does require awareness. You stay in reputable neighborhoods. You don't flash expensive watches or phones. You use registered taxis or rideshare apps, and you apply the same common sense you would in any large American city. Expat communities in Medellin and Bogota are robust and incredibly helpful for new arrivals. Connecting with those communities within your first week will make a dramatic difference in how quickly you feel at home. Colombia is not a country you visit. It's a country that gets into your blood. Most men who go for 2 weeks end up extending to a month. Most men who go for a month start researching how to get a visa extension. That's not an accident. That's Colombia doing what Colombia does. Mexico. Let me take you somewhere that is technically right next door, but feels, in the best possible way, like a completely different world. And that is Mexico. Not the resort strip of Cancun, though Cancun has its charms. I'm talking about the Mexico that most Americans have never seen, the one that sits quietly behind the tourist infrastructure and rewards the people willing to look for it. Mexico is the most visited country in the world for American expats, and that is not an accident. Proximity is the obvious answer. You can drive there from Texas or Arizona. You can fly there from almost any major American city for under $200 round trip. And time zones are compatible enough that you can still take work calls back home if you need to. But proximity alone doesn't explain the extraordinary number of American men who go to Mexico and simply never come back. Something else is happening there. Mexican culture at its core is about warmth and connection in a way that runs so deep it's almost invisible to outsiders until they've been there long enough to feel it. Family is everything. Loyalty is everything. And a man who demonstrates those values, who is consistent, present, emotionally warm, and reliable, is going to stand out in a way that might actually surprise him. Older American men specifically tend to do extraordinarily well in Mexico for several intertwined reasons. First, there is genuine cultural admiration for the United States that, while nuanced and not uncritical, creates a baseline of interest in American men as potential partners. Second, many Mexican women, particularly those in their 30s and beyond who have watched relationships with younger, less settled men fall apart, are actively seeking maturity. The man who has been around the block, who is done with games, who knows what he wants, that man has appeal that transcends the superficial. Third, and I think this is underappreciated, American men of a certain age tend to have a quiet confidence that reads as extremely attractive in Mexican culture. The peacocking and posturing of younger American men can actually read as insecurity in Mexico. But a man who sits back, listens, asks genuine questions, and carries himself with easy assurance? That is deeply appealing. Now let's talk places, because Mexico is an enormous, wildly diverse country, and where you go matters enormously. San Miguel de Allende is the crown jewel for American expats of a certain age, and I'll be honest with you, it has become somewhat colonized by Americans in a way that has driven prices up and removed some of the rawness that made it special. But it remains genuinely beautiful. Baroque churches, cobblestone streets, an arts community that is world-class, and a climate that is basically perfect every day of the year. Mexican women in San Miguel tend to be culturally sophisticated and accustomed to international men. The dating ecosystem there is active and not at all difficult to navigate for an older American man. Oaxaca is my personal favorite recommendation for men who want something a little less filtered. It is more indigenous, more culturally complex, more authentically Mexican in a way that can be both challenging and extraordinarily rewarding. The food alone, and I am not exaggerating when I say Oaxacan cuisine is among the finest on earth, is worth the trip. But what you'll find in Oaxaca is a community of women who are proud of their culture, deeply rooted in their identity, and incredibly welcoming to men who show genuine curiosity and respect. Do not go to Oaxaca with a transactional mindset. Go to Oaxaca as a student of the world, and you will be rewarded beyond anything you can currently imagine. Mexico City deserves its own paragraph because it is one of the great world cities in a way that still catches Americans off guard. It is enormous. Nearly 22 million people in the metro area, sophisticated, culturally rich, gastronomically extraordinary, and in the right neighborhoods, extremely livable on an American budget. Colonia Roma, Condesa, Coyoacan, these neighborhoods feel like a European city crossed with Latin American warmth, and they are full of educated professional Mexican women who are genuinely open to relationships with American men. Mérida in the Yucatan is safe to a degree that genuinely surprises most Americans. It consistently ranks among the safest cities in all of Latin America. It has a colonial elegance, a manageable pace, and a warm social culture. The cost of living there is low even by Mexican standards. For a man who wants to settle in rather than just visit, Mérida makes an extremely compelling case. Safety in Mexico is a topic that requires honest, nuanced engagement rather than either dismissal or panic. Certain regions and certain behaviors carry real risk, but the areas I've described, San Miguel, Oaxaca City Center, Mexico City's expat neighborhoods, Mérida, the established beach towns, are genuinely safe for residents who apply basic urban common sense. Tens of thousands of American retirees live full, active, happy lives in Mexico without incident. The key is staying informed, staying in established areas, and not doing the things that create risk anywhere in the world. Mexico will surprise you. It always does. Puerto Vallarta and the Riviera Maya offer more beach-oriented living with active social scenes and established expat infrastructure. These are good entry points if you want the reassurance of a lot of English-speaking neighbors while you find your footing. The cost of living conversation for Mexico is important. In most of these cities, a comfortable life, a nice apartment, good food, entertainment, social activities runs between $1,500 and $2,500 a month for a single person. In Mexico City or trendier areas, it can creep higher, but you're still looking at a fraction of what the equivalent life would cost in any American city. Healthcare is high quality and dramatically cheaper than in the United States. Many expats fly back to Mexico for dental work and medical procedures even after relocating because the quality-to-price ratio is that compelling. Thailand. Now, I want to take you somewhere completely different, somewhere on the other side of the world where the culture, the food, the religion, the language, and the entire framework of human interaction is unlike anything you've encountered in the Western world, and where older American men have been finding connection, companionship, and genuine happiness for decades. Thailand. Let me start with what Thailand is not, because I think it's important to address this directly. Yes, Thailand has a well-known nightlife industry in certain areas. That industry gets most of the media attention, and it has unfortunately become the lens through which many people view the entire country. But Thailand is a nation of 70 million people, a deeply Buddhist culture, an incredibly sophisticated culinary tradition, one of the most beautiful natural environments on Earth, and tens of millions of women who live completely ordinary, professional, family-oriented lives that have nothing whatsoever to do with that industry. When I talk about Thai women being warm toward older American men, I am talking about that vast, normal majority. Thai culture has several characteristics that make it particularly receptive to older Western men. Buddhism shapes daily life in ways that produce qualities that are genuinely rare in modern Western dating culture: patience, gentleness, a capacity for contentment, and a deep emphasis on kindness as a core human value. Thai women who are raised in this tradition tend to approach relationships with a warmth and a lack of drama that American men who have been through the ringer of modern Western dating often describe as almost shocking in its pleasantness. Age in Thai culture carries genuine respect, not the barely concealed disdain that American culture can sometimes project onto older men. A man in his 50s or 60s who has wisdom, stability, and generosity of spirit is genuinely desirable in Thai culture, not despite his age, but in part because of it. This is not spin. This is a cultural reality that shows up consistently in the experiences of American men who spend time there. Now let's talk about where to go. Chiang Mai in northern Thailand is the city I recommend to almost every American man considering a longer stay in Southeast Asia. It is genuinely one of the most livable cities in the world by almost any metric. Safety, cost, climate, infrastructure, quality of food, social scene for expats. It sits in a valley surrounded by mountains and temples. The old city is ringed by a moat and contains some of the most beautiful Buddhist temples you will ever see, and the overall pace of life is relaxed without being sleepy. The digital nomad and expat community there is enormous, which means you will have no shortage of fellow Americans and English speakers to build a social foundation with while you develop your Thai connections. Chiang Mai women, and by this I mean the regular working and professional women who populate the city, are known for being slightly more reserved than women in Bangkok, more traditional in orientation, and very warm once that initial reserve is broken. Language is a factor here. Thai is a tonal language and genuinely difficult for English speakers, but in Chiang Mai, you will find that many women speak enough English to have a real conversation, and making even the smallest effort to learn Thai words and phrases will earn you an enormous amount of goodwill. Bangkok is a city that overwhelms everyone the first time and then becomes deeply compelling. It is enormous and chaotic and beautiful and exhausting and exhilarating all at once. For older men, Bangkok can be a lot. It rewards a certain tolerance for sensory intensity. But Bangkok is also home to a huge population of professional, educated Thai women in their 30s and beyond who are actively using dating apps and social networks to meet Western men. Bangkok women tend to be more cosmopolitan, more accustomed to international culture, and somewhat more direct than their counterparts in the north. The city has incredible neighborhoods, Sukhumvit, Siloam, Ari, where an expat can build a genuinely beautiful life. Hua Hin is Thailand's answer to a comfortable, slower beach town. The Thai royal family has a palace there, which tells you something about its reputation. It is calmer than Phuket, more authentic than Pattaya, and has a growing expat community of retirees who chose it specifically because it offers beach living without the circus. Older men who want genuine peace and a slower pace often end up there. The cost of living in Thailand is extraordinarily low by American standards. In Chiang Mai, a comfortable life, a nice apartment, 3 meals a day at excellent local restaurants, transportation, entertainment, travel within the country, runs approximately $1,000 to $1,500 a month. Bangkok is somewhat more expensive, but still dramatically cheaper than any American city. Healthcare is another massive factor. Thai hospitals, particularly in Bangkok, are internationally accredited, the standard of care is excellent, and prices are a fraction of American healthcare costs. Many American expats in Thailand simply stop worrying about medical expenses, which is itself a quality of life improvement that cannot be overstated. One thing I want to address honestly: the cultural gap with Thailand is real and requires genuine effort to bridge. Thai society operates on different social codes around politeness, hierarchy, and emotional expression. What reads as agreement or enthusiasm in Thai culture is not always what it appears to be on the surface, and understanding the cultural subtext takes time and cultural humility. Men who approach Thailand with genuine curiosity and a willingness to learn are rewarded. Men who approach it with a sense of entitlement or a purely transactional mindset almost always have a bad time and come home with a distorted view of what Thailand actually is. The men who thrive in Thailand, and there are many of them, retired teachers and engineers and business owners and veterans who have built beautiful second chapters of their lives there, are the ones who showed up open-hearted and stayed curious. Thailand will give you back exactly what you bring to it. The Philippines. I want to stay in Southeast Asia for a moment because there is a country nearby that deserves its own extended conversation. A country with a characteristic that makes it uniquely accessible for American men in a way that no other country in Asia can match. The Philippines is the only country in Southeast Asia where English is an official language and where the vast majority of the population speaks it fluently. This is not a small thing. It removes the most fundamental barrier that exists between American men and the women of other countries in the region, the language barrier. When you walk off the plane in Manila or Cebu or Davao, you can have a real conversation with almost anyone you meet. You can be funny, you can be specific, you can express nuance, you can be yourself in language, which is a form of intimacy that no amount of translation can replicate. The Philippines has a deep and complex relationship with the United States that stretches back over a century. American culture, music, film, food, values, is woven into the fabric of Filipino society in a way that creates a natural point of connection. Filipino women who meet American men are not meeting a foreign stranger. They're meeting someone from a culture they've grown up watching, listening to, and in many ways admiring. That familiarity creates an ease in the early stages of connection that is genuinely unusual. Filipino women are also, broadly speaking, extraordinarily warm and family-oriented in a way that tends to resonate very deeply with older American men who have been through the isolation of American dating culture in middle age. The emphasis on care, on loyalty, on building a home, these are values that Filipino culture reinforces constantly. Women there are raised with a vision of love that is active and expressive rather than transactional or guarded. And for a man who has experienced the emotional unavailability that seems increasingly common in American women of a certain age and social milieu, this quality can feel transformative. Age is not a barrier in the Philippines. It is, if anything, an asset. Stability, life experience, a man who knows himself and is done with the anxious posturing of youth, these qualities are genuinely attractive in Filipino culture. Many Filipino women have a specific preference for older men that is not apologized for or hidden. It is simply a known part of their romantic landscape. Let me take you through the places. Cebu City is my top recommendation for a first extended visit. It is a manageable city, large enough to have everything you need, small enough to not be overwhelming. The expat community is active and welcoming. The beaches just outside the city are some of the best in the world. The social scene is lively without being oppressive. Women in Cebu tend to be warm, direct about their interest, and genuinely oriented toward building something real rather than playing games. The Visayan culture of the Central Philippines has a particular openness and friendliness that even other Filipinos acknowledge. Davao in Mindanao has a reputation, among those who know the Philippines well, for being one of the most orderly and genuinely safe cities in Southeast Asia. It is run with a discipline that keeps crime low, the streets clean, and the general atmosphere peaceful. It is not on the standard tourist circuit, which means the women you meet there are not women who have been through countless interactions with transient Western men and developed the wariness that can come from that experience. Davao women tend to be genuine, grounded, and looking for something real. Manila, specifically its better neighborhoods like BGC, Makati, and Ortigas, is a full world-class city with a dating scene that is both enormous and active. Dating apps are heavily used, English is universal, and professional Filipino women in Manila are sophisticated, ambitious, and very much open to meeting American men. The city itself is chaotic and not always easy to love, but for the man who wants the energy of a major urban center, Manila delivers it. The cost of living in the Philippines is very low. In Cebu, a comfortable life runs around $1,000 a month or less. In Manila's nicer neighborhoods, it edges higher, but even there you're living well for significantly less than in the States. Food is a pleasure. Filipino cuisine is rich and varied and everywhere cheap and delicious. Healthcare is affordable and the standard of care in major cities is solid. One genuine consideration for the Philippines. Internet infrastructure has improved dramatically, but can still be inconsistent outside major cities, which matters if you're working remotely. Transportation within cities can be slow due to traffic, and the country does face natural hazards, typhoons, earthquakes, that are simply part of life there and worth being prepared for. None of these are reasons not to go. They are simply things to know and plan around. What the Philippines offers, ultimately, is connection. Real, warm, English language connection with women who are not playing games, not guarded behind irony and performance, and not measuring your worth by the markers that have come to define status in American culture. It offers you the chance to be simply a man, present, warm, reliable, and to be genuinely valued for exactly that. Portugal. Let's cross back to the West, to Europe, because I want to make sure we're covering the full landscape of what's available to you. And there is a European country that has been quietly becoming one of the most compelling destinations on earth for American expats, and specifically for older American men who want safety, beauty, cultural depth, and genuine romantic connection. Portugal. Here is the first thing you need to know about Portugal, and it will reframe everything that follows. It is the safest country in Western Europe. Consistently, year after year, the Global Peace Index ranks Portugal among the top 5 safest countries on Earth. Not in Europe, on Earth. Walking alone at night in Lisbon or Porto is not a calculated risk. It is simply a walk. There is a baseline security there that Americans, who have grown up with ambient anxiety about personal safety as a background hum of daily life, find genuinely disorienting in the best possible way. You stop bracing. You relax muscles you didn't know were tensed. Portugal is also one of the only countries in Europe where an American income or retirement benefit goes far enough to provide a genuinely comfortable life. Lisbon has gotten more expensive as it has become one of the trendiest cities in the world, but Porto, the Algarve, the Silver Coast, the Alentejo region, these areas offer an extraordinary quality of life for dramatically less than any equivalent European experience. A good apartment in Porto, with real character and a view, rents for less than a studio in most American metros. Now, why do Portuguese women respond warmly to American men, and older American men in particular? Portuguese culture is Latin at heart, warm, expressive, family-oriented, and deeply oriented toward genuine human connection rather than social performance. But it is also distinctly European, with all the cultural depth, educational sophistication, and cosmopolitan sensibility that implies. Portuguese women tend to be beautiful in the way of Southern European women generally, dark-eyed, dark-haired, with a quality of physical presence that is very different from what American men typically encounter at home. And they carry themselves with a kind of grounded confidence that does not require constant external validation. Older American men specifically appeal to Portuguese women for reasons that echo what I've described in other countries, but with a particular flavor. Portugal has a cultural concept called saudade, an untranslatable word that describes a kind of longing, a beautiful melancholy, a deep emotional complexity. It is woven into the national character. And what Portuguese women often find refreshing in older American men is a kind of emotional directness and openness that their own cultural tradition does not always encourage in local men. The willingness to be vulnerable, to express care openly, to say what you feel, these are qualities that Portuguese women, who are themselves deeply emotional, respond to enormously. Lisbon is the obvious starting point. It is one of the most beautiful cities in the world, built on hills overlooking the Tagus River, with its famous yellow trams and tiled facades and evening light that seems engineered specifically to make everything look cinematic. The Alfama, Muraria, and Barro Alto neighborhoods have a bohemian warmth that is completely unlike the corporate slickness of other European capitals. Lisbon has an international social scene that is thriving, active, and full of exactly the kind of creative, curious, emotionally available people who tend to be the most interesting to know. Porto is Lisbon's rougher, more rugged sibling and, many would argue, more beautiful. It sits on a hillside above the Douro River, flanked by port wine lodges and Baroque churches, with a gritty elegance that has made it one of the most celebrated cities in Europe. Porto women have a reputation within Portugal for being particularly strong and direct. There is a local saying about Coimbra singing, Braga praying, and Porto working, and women there reflect that character. They are grounded, real, not given to performance. For a man who values authenticity above all, Porto might be your city. The Algarve in southern Portugal is where many American and British retirees end up, and for obvious reasons. The coastline is extraordinary. The year-round weather is excellent, the pace of life is gentle, and the cost of living is very reasonable. The expat infrastructure there is mature enough that navigating the practicalities, banking, healthcare, housing, is relatively straightforward for a newcomer. Portugal offers something the other countries on this list do not, which is full European Union legal infrastructure, a stable democracy, excellent healthcare, and a passport pathway for Americans who qualify under Portugal's Golden Visa or Digital Nomad Visa programs. For the man who wants to plant roots in Europe with all the security and legal stability that implies, Portugal is in a category of its own. Ukraine. I want to address something now that might feel counterintuitive, given everything that has been happening in the world since early 2022, and that is the subject of Ukrainian women and what that means in a post-war or ongoing conflict context. Let me be very clear about the geography and reality here. Western Ukraine, the cities of Lviv, Uzhhorod, Ivano-Frankivsk, is a very different situation from eastern Ukraine. Lviv in particular, located near the Polish border, has continued to function as a city throughout the conflict, hosting an enormous displaced population from the east and maintaining much of its pre-war social and cultural infrastructure. Traveling to Western Ukraine requires awareness, flexibility, and genuine respect for the gravity of what the country is going through, but it is not the impossibility that many Americans assume. That said, I am not recommending that most men reading this hop on a plane to Lviv next week. What I am saying is different and more relevant to the current moment. Ukrainian women are present in the world in a way they were not before 2022. An estimated 8 million Ukrainians have relocated to other European countries. Significant communities exist in Poland, Germany, the Czech Republic, Italy, Spain, and elsewhere. There are growing Ukrainian communities in the United States itself, and Ukrainian women, wherever they are among the most remarkable, resilient, and relationship-oriented women in the world, and they are more open to meeting and connecting with American men than at almost any previous point in history. Why do Ukrainian women appeal so specifically to older American men, and why do they tend to be open to older men as partners? Ukrainian culture places enormous value on family stability and long-term commitment. Women there are raised with a vision of partnership that is serious, not in a heavy way, but in a way that means she is genuinely invested in making something real work. She is not treating the relationship as an accessory or a content opportunity. She is thinking about a future. Ukrainian women are also, almost universally, extraordinarily well educated. Ukraine had one of the highest rates of university education in the Soviet system, and that educational culture has persisted. The woman you meet will likely speak 2 or 3 languages, have a professional background, and have read things and thought about things in a depth that can genuinely challenge and engage you. This is not a woman who needs to be impressed by your resume. She is bringing her own resume to the table. Age works in your favor in Ukrainian culture for reasons that combine the Eastern European cultural respect for experience with the current historical context. Many Ukrainian women in their 30s and 40s have watched their generation of men go to war. The simple, powerful reality of a stable, peaceful, present American man is not lost on them. Not in a helpless way. Ukrainian women are famously strong and not at all fragile, but in the way that any person who has experienced profound instability responds to genuine steadiness. For men who want to travel to Ukraine itself and are willing to navigate the reality of the situation, Lviv offers one of the most beautiful medieval city centers in Europe, extraordinary food and coffee culture, and a social atmosphere that is, remarkably, more defiant and alive than you might expect. The Ukrainians I know who are there have described a kind of profound present moment joy, people gathering, connecting, celebrating life precisely because the opposite is so near. To be present in that is to be changed by it. For men who prefer a safer approach, Poland, Warsaw, and Krakow particularly, hosts the largest Ukrainian diaspora in Europe. Polish cities currently have active Ukrainian social communities, and meeting Ukrainian women there carries none of the logistical or safety complexity of traveling to Ukraine itself. Poland, additionally, is a beautiful, safe, inexpensive European country in its own right that deserves far more attention from American men than it typically receives. Brazil. We come back to Latin America now, and we go to its largest and most complex country, a country of 215 million people, staggering cultural diversity, extraordinary natural beauty, and a warmth toward older American men that is nearly legendary among those who have experienced it. Brazil. Let me start with the elephant in the room, because Brazil has a reputation for danger that is real in some places and deeply overstated in others. Yes, certain cities and certain neighborhoods within cities carry genuine risk. This is true, but Brazil is also a country of 215 million people, most of whom live their entire lives in safety, and which contains cities, Florianópolis, Curitiba, Gramado, Campos do Jordão, that are among the safest and most beautiful in all of South America. The key to Brazil is understanding that it is not one country, but many. The Northeast, Bahia, Fortaleza, Natal, is warm, coastal, African-influenced in its culture and music, and extraordinarily vibrant. The South, Rio Grande do Sul, Santa Catarina, is European in its architectural heritage, cooler in climate, and has a character that feels almost like being in a Latin version of Central Europe. São Paulo is a world city in the fullest sense, massive, sophisticated, ethnically diverse, culturally complex. Rio de Janeiro is Rio de Janeiro, which means it is one of the most visually extraordinary cities on earth and a complete experience unto itself. Why do Brazilian women respond so warmly to older American men? Brazilian culture is, at its core, extraordinarily physical and sensory and present. The famous Brazilian warmth, the touching, the closeness, the directness of emotional expression, is real, and it creates a social temperature that is unlike almost anywhere else in the world. Brazilian women tend to be expressive, affectionate, and genuinely comfortable with physical closeness in social contexts in a way that American men, particularly those who have navigated the increasingly touch-phobic social culture of the contemporary United States, often find deeply refreshing. Brazilian women also tend to be very direct about attraction. If she is interested in you, she will not perform elaborate indifference. She will show you. For men who have spent years trying to decode the mixed signals of American dating culture, this directness is not just refreshing. It is almost emotionally therapeutic. Age in Brazil carries respect, particularly in combination with the stability and the simple cultural novelty of being American. The American man in Brazil is, in many social contexts, a figure of genuine interest. He is exotic in the right way, not in an orientalizing sense, but in the sense that he represents a different world, a different story, a different possibility. Florianópolis on the southern coast is my first recommendation for men who have not been to Brazil. It is an island city in Santa Catarina state with extraordinary beaches, a very high quality of life, and safety statistics that rival European cities. The women there tend to be well-educated, physically active in the outdoor culture of the island, and very open to international connections. The city has a significant university population, which creates a young, energy-rich social environment, but also a substantial professional and entrepreneurial community for connections of a different character. Curitiba, the capital of Paraná state in southern Brazil, is regularly cited as one of the most livable cities in South America. Excellent urban planning, robust public transportation, strong safety record, vibrant cultural scene. It is not on the radar of most American travelers, which makes it all the more rewarding for those who find it. Belo Horizonte in Minas Gerais state is a city of enormous character. The state is known for its food. Minas Gerais cuisine is arguably the soul food of Brazil. Its people, Mineiros, are famous throughout Brazil for their warmth and hospitality, and a social culture that is more intimate and community-oriented than the big coastal cities. For a man who wants to build real roots in a place rather than passing through, Belo Horizonte has everything. The cost of living in Brazil varies significantly by region and city, but in general, your American dollar goes very far there. A comfortable life in Florianopolis or Curitiba, nice apartment, good food, social activities, runs comfortably on $2,000 to $2,500 a month. Healthcare, again, is dramatically cheaper than American healthcare for comparable quality of care. Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese specifically, which has its own distinct rhythm and warmth, is the language, and making the effort to learn even a few hundred words will transform your experience. Brazilians respond to the attempt with an enthusiasm that is completely genuine. Brazil is not for everyone. It requires a certain tolerance for complexity, for noise, for the beautiful, chaotic vitality of a country that is always becoming rather than having arrived. But for the man who can meet Brazil where it is, rather than expecting it to meet him where he is, Brazil will give you something you will spend the rest of your life grateful for. Indonesia. Bali specifically. Let me take you to one more place in Southeast Asia because I would be doing you a genuine disservice if I talked about affordable, beautiful countries where older American men find connection and left out Indonesia, and specifically Bali. Bali occupies a specific place in the global imagination that is partly accurate and partly mythologized. But what the myth gets right is this: Bali is genuinely deeply different from the ordinary world. The Balinese Hindu culture that pervades the island, the daily offerings, the ceremonies, the temple festivals, the reverence for beauty as a spiritual practice, creates an atmosphere that does something to people who spend real time there. It makes them slow down. It makes them present. It makes them more themselves. For an older American man who is carrying the accumulated weight of decades of achievement orientation, of always moving toward the next thing, of performing competence for an audience, Bali is deeply destabilizing in the most healing possible sense. You arrive with your armor on, and it simply falls off. And the man who emerges underneath that armor is often someone his companions in Bali find very attractive. Indonesian women and Balinese women in particular tend to be gentle, deeply spiritually oriented, warm in a way that is quietly rather than loudly expressed, and interested in Western men who come bearing genuine curiosity about their culture. The man who participates in a temple ceremony, who learns about offerings and their significance, who shows up for the beautiful ritual that infuses Balinese daily life. That man is not just a tourist. He is a guest who has earned a kind of welcome that transcends the transactional. Ubud in central Bali is where most of the longer-term expats land, a town in the jungle-covered interior that has a wellness and arts culture, extraordinary food from around the world, alongside genuinely excellent Indonesian food, and a social scene that centers around yoga studios, organic cafes, and sunset ceremony gatherings. The community there includes enormous numbers of American and Australian and European men of every age who have found a life in Ubud that they struggle to articulate to people who haven't experienced it and that they are completely unwilling to give up. Canggu on the southern coast has become the digital nomad capital of Southeast Asia, younger and louder than Ubud, but with its own beach culture energy and a very active social scene. Seminyak is more upscale and resort-oriented. Sanur is quieter, more local feeling, preferred by expats who want to live inside Balinese life rather than alongside the expat bubble. The cost of living in Bali is extraordinarily low. A fully furnished villa with a private pool, the kind of thing, costs perhaps $800 to $1,200 a month in most parts of the island. Scooter transportation, excellent food, social activities. You are living a genuinely beautiful life for under $1,500 a month in Bali if you choose to. The visa situation in Indonesia has historically been the main friction point for long-term stays, requiring periodic visa runs to neighboring countries. Indonesia has introduced a digital nomad visa that helps address this for those with remote income. It is worth researching the current state of the visa options before planning a longer stay. What Bali ultimately offers is a kind of beauty, physical, cultural, spiritual, that recalibrates your sense of what life can look, feel, and smell like. And the connections you make there, with Indonesian women and with the extraordinary international community of people who have found their way to the island, have a depth and texture that is hard to find anywhere else on Earth. Conclusion. I want to leave you with something real, something that goes beyond the practical information we've covered today. Every country I've described to you is not just a location where the economic math works in your favor and where women are open to you. Each one is a living, breathing culture full of people who deserve your genuine respect, your curiosity, and your full presence. The men who go to these places and find extraordinary connection and extraordinary lives are not the men who went with a checklist. They are the men who went with an open heart. You are not too old. You are not irrelevant. You are not finished. In much of the world, you are just getting interesting. The maturity you've accumulated, the losses you've survived, the wisdom you've earned, these are not liabilities. In the eyes of women in Colombia, Mexico, Thailand, the Philippines, Portugal, Ukraine, Brazil, and Bali, these are the things that make you worth knowing. So do the research, save the money, learn some of the language, and then get on the plane. I'm Julia. I'll see you in the next one.